Hey guys, welcome back to Problem Solved, the show where I take you through basic home DIY and home repair, as well as product reviews and stuff like that. Today we're going to be repairing a crack in our drywall here and hopefully making it so it doesn't come back anymore. So let's go ahead and do this. Alright guys, this is the crack we're going to be working with today. As you can see, it starts right here at the windowsill and then goes all the way down right here. It goes to the edge. It doesn't quite go to the floor, but it goes pretty long. And as you can see here also, it looks like it's been patched before. However, it doesn't look like it was done correctly. So I'm going to show you guys how to do this correctly, and hopefully this crack will not come back any longer. So the first thing you're gonna need is one of these. This is called a 5-in-1 or a Puttyknife. I don't know another name for it, but I just call it a 5-in-1. Basically, you're gonna take this pointed end right here and you're gonna make the crack a little bit wider. And the reason why we do that is we need a place for the sealant to go in. So we're gonna go ahead and drag this on and make it a little bit wider, and I'll show you how we're gonna do that. So we're gonna take the back edge of this and we're just gonna drag it through the crack here. And this is drywall, so it should just drag along there pretty easily. And we're making it a little wider here. And this doesn't have to be perfect, you're just making it wider so you have a place for the compound to go and seal it up. Once you get down to the edge where the crack ends, you want to go maybe a 1/2 inch to 1 inch out, and you want to make a cross, just a cross section, so the crack has nowhere else to spread if it does come back. Now this is a little bit harder because it's right here on the edge, but the crack is only in the drywall. So I'm just gonna do a cross section right here. And as you can see, I've made the crack much wider. And then you can take your 5-in-1 and you can just scrape to get all the rough edges off, because you want it as smooth as possible. Don't worry about how it looks right now. Once you got the mud on and it's painted, it's fine. The next thing I want to do, just to make sure it's totally sealed, is I'm going to take my utility knife here and I'm just going to scrape kind of diagonal along the edges, you know, to kind of make like a V shape that the mud can kind of sit in. So I'm going to take this, I'm just going to scrape it along the edges here. We'll do one side and then we'll do the other side. And again, this doesn't have to be perfect. You're just giving like an extra trough for the mud to sit into, so it seals it up nice and good. Now that we did that side, we can come back and do the other side. Now we just want to scrape it again with our knife, get any rough edges off. That's pretty good. The next thing you want to do is you want to get some joint compound, or you want to get some drywall mud, and you want to fill in this crack. So I'm going to be using this Drydex joint compound. This is lightweight, low dust stuff. This stuff dries pretty quickly. It goes on pink, dries white. There's other stuff. You can get more stuff like this that's pre-mixed, or you can get stuff that's not pre-mixed and you can mix it yourself. I'm just going to use this stuff here and we're going to seal up this crack. Now this first coat is kind of critical. We're probably going to end up doing 2 or 3 coats on this, but this first coat you have to fill in the crack completely. Just get it all in there. Once you have the first coat on, you can take off the excess or scrape off the excess with your knife, just like this. Pretty well got all the excess on there. Now we're just gonna wait for this to dry, then I'll show you guys the next steps. So it's been a few days since I was working on this crack. I started to work on it and then I got sick, so I had to take a few days off. But we're back at it. We're gonna finish up patching this crack. We did 1 coat of the joint compound, as you can see here. Now we gotta get rid of all the rough edges, and you can do that just by light sanding, and then I'll show you what we're gonna do next. So you can get rid of some of the higher raised areas just by taking your scraper, your painter's tool, and just running it over the areas. This includes your trowel marks and stuff like that along the edges. Run it along the side. Again, this is just our first coat, so you don't have to worry about getting things perfect, but you do want the wall relatively smooth. We'll just take this, scrape off any rough areas, then we'll take our sandpaper and we'll just lightly sand just to get this a little bit more smooth. This is 320 grit, pretty light sandpaper. Now that our sanding is complete, we're gonna put another coat of compound on, and we just wanna make sure that that crack gets covered up. Try to get it as smooth as possible. Don't worry about trowel marks because you can just scrape those off as I showed you. But we're gonna do another coat and then it's time to tape, and then probably need 2 more coats after that with sanding in between, and then we can go to paint. This compound that I'm using, as I mentioned before, dries pretty quickly. I think it dries within 2 to 3 hours, and then we can go ahead and sand it down, and then we can do the joint tape, and then after that it's time for more coats. Now that we have our initial coats of our compound on here, we can again take our painter's tool, our 5-in-1, and just scrape away any rough spots, and then we'll sand those down just to get them smooth. You want it pretty smooth at this point because we're gonna apply mesh tape afterwards. We're gonna use this. So this is mesh tape. This is adhesive mesh tape, and we'll cover the crack with this, and then we're gonna put another layer of the compound on top. So let's get this sanded smooth. So now that it's smooth, we're just gonna apply some mesh tape here. This stuff is adhesive. It's not too crazy strong though, but you just wanna apply this along the length of the entire crack. I like using the mesh tape because you can see the crack through it, so you can see exactly where you're covering. So we'll just cover that crack and the entire crack up. Okay, so that's pretty good. We have the mesh tape on there. Now we can put some more compound on there and wait for that to dry. For this next application of compound, you want to feather out the compound a little bit further away from the actual crack. This will allow you to blend things in a little bit better, so it'll be less visible or not visible at all when it comes time to paint. And get it pretty far. You can go out 6, 10, even 12 inches from the crack. So that's what it looks like after the tape's been applied and after I put more compound on top. We're just gonna let that dry, and then we'll get rid of all these trowel marks, sand down the rough edges again, and we'll apply another coat, feather it out even further, and then we're ready for paint. Now that the latest coat is dry, it's time to scrape away those rough edges again. It's finally time for our final bit of sanding and our last coat, and then paint. So for the last coat, you want to make sure that not only do you cover all of the tape so you can't see any of it, but you also want to feather it out along the edges to make sure that you won't see any of the patch once you paint over it. Another helpful hint is when you're putting your joint compound on your knife, your putty knife, to spread it, make sure it's in the center and you don't have anything on the edges. This means as it spreads out, you won't get those big trowel marks on the side of your wall when you're troweling it. It's time to do the last coat. We're gonna feather it out really thin near the end, and then we'll do a final little light sanding just to kind of blend everything in, and then it's time for paint. So we are just about done sealing this crack up. That's what it looks like right now. We're about to move to paint and texturing and whatnot. But before we do that, you want to take a brush and you want to make sure you just remove any excess dust, because there's going to be a lot of excess dust from all the sanding and whatnot. So I'll just brush this down just to remove all that dust. You don't want that dust present when you're going to paint. All right, now it's just time to paint. So we're all finished, all painted and whatnot. This is how it looks. I wasn't perfect on the texturing. I can go back and correct that later. But as you can see, no more crack. Wall looks good. Definitely looks better than before. So it takes a little bit of time, but it's really not hard. And hopefully that crack will not come back. Hopefully if it does come back, it won't come back for a really long time. There are different ways that you can do this. This is the way that I have found that seems to work the best and the longest. However, I'm not a drywall pro, so a drywall pro could probably do this a little bit better, but they are gonna follow the same basic procedure that I follow. They just may use a little bit higher quality joint compound and higher quality tools and whatnot. But I just wanted to show you guys how to do it, a quick DIY for how to fix a crack in your drywall and hopefully have it last a lot longer than just a few months. I hope you guys found that video helpful. Thank you for joining me. Please like and subscribe, and any questions you got, go ahead and put them in the comments below. And yeah, thank you for joining me for another problem solved.